Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday night. It is Tuesday night with Ben Stowe. We are back with the legend, Ben Stowe himself. Good evening, Ben.
I don't know about that legend stuff, but it's good to be back. It was really nice to have messages from people saying, "When are you doing a show again?" And I'm excited to be back. It's been a pretty wild couple weeks, but c'est la vie, right?
Yep. We've been off for a little while. I mean, we've had shows up, but there were some things we did at NAMM, and we wanted to get those out there and such, because a lot of the stuff we were just talking about at NAMM is now becoming available for DJs. So our timing in some aspects was really good, but it kind of got us out of recording shape.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see if I can get back in the groove, just like falling off a bike, right?
Exactly. The ground's there each and every time. It's awesome. Or wait, no, it's riding the bike. We're supposed to stay on it. See, there's our problem. We get confused. Tonight, Ben, we're going to talk about a subject that is near and dear to the heart of most of us in the mobile DJ industry. We want to talk about kind of microphones and how to set microphones up and what all these little gain things involved with mics really mean. So, are you ready for this?
Well,
that was a pregnant pause there.
Does it matter?
Pretty much, no. We're gonna go.
So let me say this. I think we should do an entire show on gain structure. I think this maybe we'll touch on a few things that we talked about recently, including crest factor and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And we'll kind of set some groundwork. But I think an entire show on gain structure is in order. And really, I mean, this is a show that could go on for, weeks. And of course, people can only tolerate so much of me, so we won't do that.
So we'll spread it out. We'll
share the love a little bit.
We'll call you peanut butter, and we'll push you around to the corners of the bread.
That's all right. So, yeah, I think, with setting up microphones is a good place to start. And I grabbed a few props and things that hopefully are useful today in our discussion, and we'll just kind of jump down the rabbit hole and see where it goes.
Sounds awesome. That has gotten us many places in the last year.
Yeah, to the edges of the bread.
Exactly. So first off, let's start. A traditional DJ system is going to have some sort of amplification, whether it's in the speakers, and then it has a mixer of some sort. And then, of course, we're hooking in the microphone. So let's start looking at specifically like wireless microphone systems a little bit when we're talking about some of that gain, because I think that's where most of us struggle. I think the microphone, plugging it in, I think we've got. But let's kind of tell people how that works, and then let's go to the wireless.
Well, a microphone behaves very similarly to a loudspeaker in terms of its electrical characteristics. Now, there's different types of microphones, condenser, electric condenser, that sort of thing. But for the sake of super simplicity, let's just talk about a standard dynamic microphone in which the element moves. We have a magnet and we have a coil, just like a loudspeaker.
Mm-hmm.
And this generates electricity, which is the electrical representation of your audio. And then this, of course, travels down our mic cable and goes into our mixer. I think one of the first places we should probably start is to discuss a term that people have heard called microphone preamp.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we're talking about with gain, is we have an amplifier in our mixer. This really tiny audio electrical signal comes from our microphone, and then we preamplify it into the mix so that it's the same as a line level signal. And I prepared some graphics, and I don't really know where we're going to use them. Maybe now's a good spot to just jump one in.
Let's do it.
So if we take a look at the graphic, you'll see that we have a microphone, and below it we have a CD player. And you can see that the input voltages are substantially different.
Mm-hmm.
The triangle represents an amplifier in the circuit. So what we see is that microphone is going to be amplified to the same voltage level as the CD player before it goes into the mixing part. And this amplifier has an adjustment, which we'll call gain. And then, of course, once we have everything at the same level, it goes through our mix, and then it goes out to a loudspeaker, and there it's amplified again. I should say it goes through the amplifier and then to a loudspeaker.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's a passive loudspeaker or an active loudspeaker really doesn't matter. It's getting amplified. It's just a question of where that amplifier is located. Whether it's in the speaker box or in a rack,
right.
It's still Okay, um, and that's where we would use that gain trim and that gain adjustment to adjust based on the sensitivity and the strength of the signal coming in on that microphone. And we can go way down the rabbit hole real quick and say that on a live sound console, not only do we have that input gain adjustment, but there's also things called pads where we could reduce the signal by maybe 20 dB or something, and different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this gets, I feel like we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But one of the reasons you would do that is that every amplifier has kind of a sweet spot. So if that signal's, too hot, we're running out of headroom, and some terms that we're going to talk about here in a minute, we would use that pad to bring it back to where we can now use the gain and adjust that into kind of the, as we would say, the sweet spot of that amplifier.
Sure.
All the reasons for this bring us to, I guess, another slide. And what you see here is the yellow signal is a crude drawing that represents our audio signal. And viewers, I apologize. I, as usual, didn't spend a lot of time prepping for the show. These are drawings that I made for a PowerPoint years ago, and I'm recycling them. So saving those electrons from the
That's right.
digital wasteland. Yeah,
exactly. We're saving tree. No,
that's right.
Wait.
Saving electronic trees. Yes.
Virtual trees. There we go. There's a virtual forest in northern Minnesota that's just a little healthier tonight.
That's a future Radiohead album, I think. We've already got fake plastic trees, and now maybe fake electronic trees, perhaps. But okay, if we take a look at this drawing, we see my little staticky drawing that represents the system noise. I think everybody's familiar. If you hear like kind of a hiss coming from your system, there's some inherent amount of noise. Hopefully low, but there's some noise in every system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if our signal is very close to, we call it the noise floor, where the noise lives. And if our signal is really, really low and it lives down there by the noise, when we look at the right side of the graphic, you'll see that once you start to amplify that, as you bring up the signal, you also are bringing up the noise. So the noise gets louder and your signal gets louder. And of course, we don't have a very good sounding signal. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to jump to the next slide. Okay, and what you see here now is that our signal is quite a bit higher than the noise floor, which is what we want. And the distance between the signal and the noise floor is what we call our signal to noise ratio. What's the ratio of my signal to the noise? And we want the highest signal to noise ratio that we can have until we see the red line going across where we run out of headroom in the system. We run out of dynamic range, a couple of terms that maybe we'll get into a little deeper here. But bottom line, if we see the yellow line that's going over the red line, that signal can't be reproduced. The system doesn't have the capability of reproducing that, so it clips it off. And there's the term clipping.
Okay.
That yellow peak that's over the red line just isn't going to exist. It's just going to get cleaved off or clipped off, and that signal then has clipped. And so we don't want that, obviously. We don't want clipping. And so really what it boils down to is kind of a balancing act between the maximum signal to noise ratio we can have, but without clipping and without running out of headroom, which allows us to have peaks.
Now, signal to noise, what type of gear typically would we see that? Is that in mixers, or does that transfer to other elements of our sound system also?
Well, it's in everything. And that's what I say. We're getting into really a great big windy trail of gain structure as a whole, because every piece of gear has a certain amount of dynamic range. And what's sort of a challenge for people, I think, is that amplifiers tend to have the least amount of headroom. And that gets into the way that amplifiers are marketed and sold, and why the numbers are what they are. They typically use a sine wave or something with a low crest factor. So where our mixer might be capable of higher peaks, our amp is not. And that probably is confusing just the way I say it. And like I said, we really need to get into a show to explain that. And so what we would do then is properly adjust our gain structure all the way through so that everything has the most equal gain structure coming out the other end, which is really why you would adjust your amplifiers last. Anyway, that's for another show.
No, certainly. But that gives us an idea that it exists in different elements of this configuration.
Absolutely. And in this case, we're gonna just kind of bring it back to super simple for DJ. Line level outputs from CD players and that sort of thing ought to be pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
That 0 dB, they ought to be pretty close to that 1.2 volt. Shouldn't have a lot to do there. Microphones can vary greatly, though. They can vary greatly based on the microphone and also based on the source material coming into the microphone. And certainly when you do any live sound mixing, you know that you're going to make some substantial adjustments. Again, by putting pads on some channels, we might have differences of, minus 20, minus 30 dB differences between some of these channels coming in, where somebody needs a bit of a boost and, maybe this one doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because we want as much signal as we can without the noise so that when we bring everything through to the mix, we have a good, clear, clean representation of the signal that's not clipped and not bringing a lot of noise along with it. This will also depend on the type of microphone that's used. And that's why getting specifically into wireless microphones, when you buy a handheld microphone, most times you don't see any type of attenuation on it or any type of way to adjust the level of signal. You plug a cable into it and what you get is what you get. In the case of taking a wireless microphone transmitter, we're going to plug a mic into this, and then this becomes, in essence, an amplifier of sorts that sends that mic signal wirelessly. So we don't want to have that issue existing in the wireless circuitry of this wireless.
Yeah.
And so here's some quick examples, and maybe I'm getting ahead of us here again, but on this wireless here, I don't know if we'll be able to see this. Here we can just see minus 10, 0, and mic is what it says.
Okay.
So it's just giving us a couple of basic settings.
So now what does that now? That is sending it. That's controlling the signal coming from that transmitter to the wireless. Is that correct, or is that based on the signal coming into that?
Based on the signal coming into that. This is sort of a multi-function device. This could be using a variety of different microphone types that we might plug into it,
mm-hmm.
Or maybe a guitar, which would be a different signal altogether. So it has the ability to make some adjustments based on what's being plugged into it. Because here again, we want the most signal we can get, but we don't want that distorted, clipped, overmodulated. I think everybody's heard at some point a mic that's overmodulated, and it sounds just like garbage.
And what would it sound like, an overmodulated mic?
I'll try to do my best impersonation.
Please.
It would sound kind of I don't have a great word, but distorted. Really. Boy, I'm sure there's a great word. It's just not coming to my mind.
Right.
Very distorted.
It sounds like, and I've heard that where a person has and it sounds like they're eating the microphone, even though they're not, but it's like they're right up to next to it, and
yeah, you certainly lose any real intelligibility or dynamic range of it. It's gonna and the problem with that is that if it's occurring here, you can't fix it back in the mixer.
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic button to take a clipped signal and unclip it. Certainly not that I know of.
Right.
And if anybody's got one, send it to me right now. So if it's clipping here, you're pretty much out of luck.
Yeah.
But we could adjust that here. We could adjust the sensitivity or the input gain of this pack, and then we could, again, still have the highest possible signal without clip. This wireless system here actually uses a rotary pot. Mm-hmm. So instead of just having 3 settings, we can turn that like a mixer knob, just like we would on a mixing board, for example.
Right.
Others, here's another one with a little bit like a selector on the side. And here we have 0, minus 10, minus 20, minus 30 dB.
Interesting that it goes down and not above. What's the reasoning behind that?
Because we really don't need to go above. We're, again, with the mic types that are being plugged in, it's I would say much more likely that mic is going to get overmodulated, or that we're going to have a hot signal like a guitar or something, and hopefully not have to add preamp gain at the pack anyway.
Okay, sure.
the objective is that on the wireless receiver end, we're taking a mic level output and sending to the mixer board.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one here, a bit more advanced, but this one has some adjustments that can be made via the menu. We won't find any selector switches or anything here. It's all going to show up on the screen as a menu. We can adjust that sensitivity of the system. And then coming into the board, DJs sometimes have it really rough, John. I think DJs don't get a lot of love sometimes in the touring world.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we sometimes look down on DJs because they don't use $60,000 mixing boards. And having been a working DJ for a while, many years, 15 years, I think I have a lot of empathy.
Uh-huh.
I think DJs want great sound, and certainly the ones that are watching the show probably not doing it for the entertainment value. They're doing it because they want to make great sound.
Yeah, for sure.
And yet they're often given woefully inadequate tools, I think. So in some regards, I think touring engineers should actually give a lot more respect to DJs. You should say, "Wow, you're making bricks without hay.
Mm-hmm.
You're out there trying to make good sound, and you don't have a $60,000 mixing board because believe me, there's a lot of tools there. There's those that makes your life much better actually. In some ways, I would say it's not harder, it's easier.
Yeah,
that'll probably get me. I'll probably get kicked out of the tour club. Nobody will want.
Exactly. They're going to take your man club badge away. No, you're not part of it.
You know what they'll do? They'll give me the back bunk right over the engine and bouncing up and down, but whatever. So some DJ boards do, and here's a really small live sound kind of hybrid type board that I've grabbed.
Uh-huh.
Here we have a gain input, and then we have our level adjustment down here, which this would be like our fader, but this is our preamp input gain. And the other thing we'll notice is we don't have those on the line channels. Because again, line should be fixed at about 1.2, but here we need that preamp gain to adjust that potentially 2 millivolt signal, 0.002 of a volt, is going in and being pre-amplified up to a line level. So then we can mix. Then we can actually put it into our mix. And I do have one more slide, and this is of a picture, a DJ mixer. Okay, so what you see in this picture now is this DJ mixer that's shown does have input gain. And it does have input gain on the line signals as well, which is I think important as lines have changed. We're not necessarily using CD players, anymore, but now we're using a variety of input sources, whether it's a computer or we are forced to use a guest's iPod or whatever. But anyway, we have some more control now.
Mm-hmm.
We have some more of that control, and then of course at the bottom we have our fader. So we have that input gain and the fader, and ideally, I would take all my input gains and make them about the same so that my signal level coming in is all about the same across the board. And then I can use my faders to mix, which is exactly as the name implies. Not necessarily beat mix in this case, but to make my musical mix of the levels of microphones versus instruments or whatever. And in a DJ's case, it's really kind of the same thing there. You want your music sources to be able to mix at an equal level. You want to have your microphone in for announcements and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to note, random thought for the day, when you have more than one microphone open, meaning on, you reduce your headroom by 3 dB every time you double that. So going from 1 mics to 2, you lose 3 dB of headroom, and then 2 mics to 4, and that sort of thing. And we kind of see these logarithmic patterns repeated over and over in audio. Anyway, the moral of that story is keep your open microphones to a minimum. If they don't need to be open, don't have them open if you can. Or bring the levels down, or mute the channel or whatever. But every time you have more microphones open, it's making your life harder to mix.
Interesting. So when a person has that 6 or 7 mics, and all of a sudden you have people, and I've seen this on some of the church Facebook groups where they're talking, they get the choir mics and they turn all 6 choir mics on, and all they're getting is roar, and they have the sound goes down and they get a rumbly feedback. Is that all part?
Yeah, that's that. You're experiencing that. You're reducing that output gain by 3 dB every time you double the number of microphones that are open. And of course, on a stage, that can be a real challenge where maybe I've got 8 to 12 microphones on a drum kit alone.
Mm.
And then some mics on instruments and vocalists and that sort of thing. And of course you have to have those on, but you have to be mindful of that, and that's where gain structure becomes really important. But where I see this for DJs is, we have people who are saying, well, my amp is clipping and I don't know why. I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, my input isn't that high on the amplifier. But again, that signal could be exceeding the gain structure limitations of that amplifier.
Uh-huh.
The dynamic range of the mixer is greater than the amplifier, and we haven't fixed anything in the gain structure. And that's, like I said, a whole different show. But this is kind of a good primer for that, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I wrote these down because I'm the attention deficit poster child, and I wanted to make sure I get all this stuff in. And for those that follow me on Facebook, they know I just did 7 shows in 7 days, and so I'm pretty fried right now. So I had to write things down.
And this is one of the few times in our year of doing shows, I think, that you've had notes.
Yes, well, and it's just simply because I am the ADHD poster child, and I realized I put in something in excess of 150 hours last week, and I know that this could just turn into a long rambling tangent, and I think we're up to like 8 viewers now, and I want to keep them. So
yeah, exactly. Yay, Mom and her bridge club! Woo!
That's right. I'm not above bribery either. All right, let's see. We talked about noise floor. Peak level, of course, is the maximum level of the signal. Clipping level is that maximum level before distortion occurs, where like I said, we're clipping off the top of that signal. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about signal to noise ratio, dynamic range. I've kind of used that term a couple different times. Let's just say that's the difference between the highest point of the signal and the lowest point of the signal.
Sure.
That's the dynamic range of that signal. And then headroom, which you've heard me use that term a couple times. Headroom is the difference between the clipping point and the maximum level of the signal. And we want to have some headroom because, like we talked about in our other show about crest factor and that sort of thing, we need to have that crest factor. We need to be able to compensate for those peaks and yet still be able to cleanly produce the RMS, or the root mean square, or the average level of our sound. But we have to be able to compensate for those peaks, or else they get clipped.
And then we can tell when that happens because the sound is just not there.
Exactly. It's going to sound distorted, and that's just like we talked about here. We're going to clip that signal. Mm-hmm. What questions do you have so far?
Well, I actually have a few, but there's some of those I think we want to get into another show. The gain structure, of course, is something we definitely going to need to dig into. I wanted to, and I don't know, maybe if we can talk about this tonight, or this should be our next show, is talking about the difference between when we had turntables and we had the phono input signal compared to a mic input signal compared to a line input signal. I've seen mixers or own mixers over the years that have had all three as RCA or XLR type inputs. What is the difference between those three?
Well, this one does too. In fact, here we have an RAA preamp for phono. And there's that word again, preamp. That's exactly what we're doing. We're preamplifying it. And in the same sense that the microphone signal comes in very low and then it's preamplified, phono signals on particularly older turntables, all we're getting is the vibration of the needle and the groove and the electrical circuit that's from that. That's what's creating that very, very small voltage. So we use what's called a phono preamp, and that amplifies that to line level. Some of the more recent turntables have preamps built in. They're sending line signal out. Very important to know which is which.
Oh, for sure.
If you take a line level signal and you put it into a phono preamp, it'll send you right to the ceiling. It's going to sound absolutely awful, and it's going to be very, very, very loud signal and distorted and all sorts of bad things. So that's a really good question, because it's relational in that while microphones need to be preamplified, so do also phonos if they don't already have a preamp in there somewhere. Some microphones have preamps built in. For example, a wireless receiver, which I didn't bring one to show, but just sort of imagine on the back of a wireless receiver, you maybe have an XLR mic level output, and you may have a 1/4 inch line level output. line level is amplified. That's a 1.2 volt or whatever. And there's two different line levels. We get into pro and consumer, and that's probably a whole other show too. But because we get into different units of measurement too, the dBu and it's exciting, yeah. But anyway, there's a preamp built into that wireless receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to give us a mic level because that's what most pro audio mixing boards want. But then they're going to give us a line level for some versatility. Now we could actually go the other way with this, and we could talk about things like direct boxes or DI boxes or direct insert boxes, which allow us to take a line signal like that and pad it down to a balanced mic signal and then feed it into one of the mic preamps on the board. And that's, again, a whole nother topic. But maybe, I think a lot of DJs maybe are getting into doing some live sound support, things with ceremonies. I've got a guitar there. I need to get this guy into my rig. How do I do that? So maybe another show I see kind of blossoming here on basic live sound mixing. And of course, I have some friends that are DJs out there, by the way, that have incredible live sound experience too. So I certainly don't mean to imply that DJs don't. But that there's a really broad gambit. Many DJs are their sound techs for their churches, help out in community centers. Some are have full on tour experience. But for those who who don't, I think that might be a good show.
Yeah, I think that definitely the DI box concept, and we talked earlier before we went on live tonight. Is there's some ceremony things we could be talking about, so we could probably do a series of shows here in the next few weeks talking about different aspects of doing and being involved with wedding ceremonies.
Well, I agree, and maybe it's because of my own ADHD and my own career. 15 years as a working DJ, but also now 20 years with tour sound and that sort of thing. I don't really see the distinction. I don't see, well, this is a sound guy and this is a DJ. Certainly, DJs are performers, but I guess I don't draw the lines quite so clearly. I see it as one really big industry and one big industry family. So that's why I had somebody message me today and said, "Well, you must be running out of topics for DJs." And I said, not really. It's a great big world out there, and I think it's kind of fun to venture into the other areas where we can perfect our craft and practice our trade.
Yeah, for sure. Great stuff, Ben. For those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. For those of you who listened to tonight's show, if you want to check out the video and see that, you can go out to djntv.com, click on the episodes, or click on the Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe link, and that'll take you to the video so you can watch check out the videos and the graphics and such. Otherwise, we thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it tremendously because, well, again, Ben's Mom's Bridge Club, there's only 8 of them. We got them all thanks to Ben washing cars that weekend. But
geez, yeah, I feel like I should come up with something smart alecky here for our audio viewers, since they missed out on all the graphics and they missed out on all of this. But
the magic of moving pictures, it's awesome.
I got nothing. I got nothing.
Great stuff, Ben. Once again, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, share on social media. Go out to iTunes and rate our shows, please. We really appreciate that, and that's a big thing in the Apple world. So if you catch the podcast, pop out iTunes, search for Disc Jockey News, or you can search, this is cool, you can search Ben Stowe Tuesday, and there we are.
We're on iTunes?
On iTunes.
I'm internet famous?
You are on their iTunes. I mean, it's like, if you go look, it's like Taylor Swift and Ben Stowe.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But he's there, right there. You can find both Taylor and Ben in the same spot.
I'll tell you what, we were talking about this weekend. Don't ask me why or how, but we were talking about Taylor Swift. Say what you want about Miss Swift, but you can't argue with her incredible talent and her ability to top charts in different genres. So if you want to make this a comparison of fame or marketability, to even be put in that same sentence, which I know you're saying in jest, that's I tell you what, leave Taylor alone.
I must.
She's earned. I have a lot of respect for her ability to be as successful as she is and to command the markets that she does.
And riding that wave and staying at that level for a number of years already. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. And I'll say in the next sentence, I don't want any part of it. I mean, it's great that we have viewers and it's great that we get to share the knowledge of people. And I love helping out, but believe me, there's no part of me that wants fame at all.
Yeah.
I've seen the other side of that curtain, I think, too. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot easier for us to help people from this position because you get that point and it doesn't seem like you can as much. And anyway, life goes in a way.
Right.
Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. I'm John Young from the Disc Jockey News and Disc Jockey News TV. This is Ben Stowe from NLFX Pro. Have a good night.